not doing Moxie today. No.
Way to go.
Today, we're going to talk about activities management. So here's the idea of today. In fact, what I'm going to tell you about what we're going to talk about today, this class in particular is one that I love baseball. And some of you may or may not know that I love baseball, but one of the things with baseball is as a hitter, a lot of times in baseball, they will go through a slump, meaning they get up there and it's like they just can't hit the ball for whatever reason. The idea of today's class is if you ever feel like that in your business, so one of two things, if you're either new and wanting to get your business up and running, we're going to help you with what you need to do and how to know if you're being effective with your time. So the name of this class is Activities Management. And the idea is, how do you know if you're being effective with your time? Because it is not uncommon for agents. And in fact, I have a friend who is at a different company and just was talking to him recently. And I even last night said to my wife, it's funny, he's falling into the same trap that all agents fall into, which is thinking, well, I got to get this and I got to learn that. And so even since Lisa, since you brought up Moxie, is sometimes we feel like, oh, I got to learn Moxie. I got to learn the systems and then I can go and start to work. And so what we're going to talk about today is how to not fall into that trap. And then, so the second thing is then, since I brought up being in a slump in baseball, if throughout your real estate career, you ever feel like I'm in a slump, like I feel like everything I'm doing is not working, the thing that I recommend you do is what we're going to talk about today, is if you'll go back to this and use the tool that I'm going to give you today, it will help you to see, am I being productive? Am I being effective with my time? So today's class really is it's a time management class, but it's going to be a little different than you've ever done a time management class before, because I'm tying it specifically to real estate. And how do you do it in terms of real estate so that you know, am I being effective? Is what I'm doing working? And like I say, if you're ever in a slump, and so let me talk about another friend that I trained in this, probably over 15 years ago, but I talked to him about a year ago and I asked him how business was and he said, great. And then we started talking about this activities management. And I asked him, do you still use this tool? And he said, anytime I feel like my business is off track, I immediately start to use that tool again. Now, at that time, a little over a year ago, when I talked with him, he was on track to make over $600,000. So, so this, like, I'm saying that from the standpoint of he still uses this tool, even though he's going to make $600,000 a year from real estate. Okay?
What is that tool again?
What's that?
What is that tool again?
What is the tool? I'm going to show you today. That's what we're going to do. I just am giving you the commercial up front of here's what we're going to do to get you excited for it. So, all right. Now, so here's where we're going to start is I first need to, I got to turn on the projector here and I got to bring the screen down. So, because here's where we're going to start is what we're going to start with today is we're going to start with, I'm going to go through, I've got a PowerPoint that when you see it, you'll notice that it hasn't been updated in many years, but it doesn't matter because it still works. It's still effective. So what I'm going to show to you guys is I'm going to, they're all on Zoom.
Yeah. So, Ross, have you had classes that you are the only one because everybody's on Zoom?
During COVID, yeah, that happened quite a bit where I was the only one in you. But yeah, I'd much rather have you in here. So thank you for being here.
There, you see. We knew that you were going to be alone, so we came.
You did? That's nice of you. I appreciate it. All right, so here we go. So what we're going to talk about, so we're going to go through, we're talking about time management. I'm going to give you this tool that you can use to either help you get your business going, or if you're ever in a slump, to use it as a way to get out of the slump, okay? Now, but before we do that, we're first going to talk about a couple of Parkinson's laws. So I'm not anticipating that you guys know who he is, but we're going to talk about this guy by the name of C. Northcott Parkinson. C. Northcott Parkinson was kind of the inventor, I don't know if inventor is the right word, but creator maybe of time management. or business consulting. So if you think about business consulting, this guy, C. Northcott Parkinson, is kind of the guy who probably is the father of all of that, like creating business consulting. And he lived around the turn of the century, but he was, and not 2000 century, 1900, but he was working on his PhD thesis in about 1930. And what happened is he was studying the Royal Navy and in England. So he was studying the Royal Navy, and what he was trying to figure out as part of his PhD thesis was what was going on there and how to help them be more effective, basically. And in the process of him studying the Royal Navy, he came up with a number of what he called Parkinson's laws. Okay, so we're going to talk about two of Parkinson's laws. The first one is what he calls it's Parkinson's law of expansion. Okay, and what he found was this, and this is true, by the way, for your business as well. And I'm going to say a lot about it to help you understand it. But C. Northcott Parkinson said, work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. So when you hear that, what does that mean? Work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion.
What I think it means?
Yeah.
If I had 30 minutes to do a Rep C, I would get that Rep C done in 30 minutes. I had all afternoon to do it. That's how long it would take.
Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly right. Just to make sure you guys on Zoom heard it. She said, if I have 30 minutes to fill out a Rep C, I'd get it done in 30 minutes. If I have all afternoon, work will expand so as to fill the time available for its completion. You're going to take all afternoon to fill it. So the idea being, if you know, hey, I'm going to go to the office today, and especially for you guys as real estate agents, it's not like you have a quote unquote boss that's there to say to you, okay, here is what I need you to get done today, right? Like if you don't show up at the office, does anybody call you and say, hey, why aren't you, like, meaning now if you went away for a while, that probably would happen. But just if tomorrow you just are like, yeah, I don't feel like going to the office. Is anybody going to call you tomorrow and be like, hey, why aren't you at work?
No.
And maybe we should do that, you know, probably would be good, but
Not running a daycare.
but that's right. We're not running. Well, I kind of am as the principal broker, but just again, for you guys on Zoom, Lisa said, you're not running a daycare. And I said, well, I kind of am as the principal.
So are they part of your phone?
Yeah, that's right. So, okay. But so here's the thing. Part of what you want to understand is just human nature is work will expand to fill the time available for its completion. So if you say to yourself, I'm going to go to the office tomorrow and I'm going to be there from 8 a.m. or 7:30 a.m. until, let's say, 5 o'clock. Work will expand so as to fill the time available. You'll figure out stuff to do to be here at the office for that whole time. Does that make sense? So that's the first thing that he found, that Parkinson found in this study of the Royal Navy. So the next thing, and my clicker's not working. So hang on. Let's see here.
Tell your clicker that the holidays are over. It needs
I
to
know,
start
clicker, the
working.
holidays are over. Time to work. All right, so here we go. So here's what he looked at. Here's what he found. So when he looked at this, what he found is this, as he was working through this Royal Navy. So in 1914, the number of ships that the Royal Navy had in commission was 62. In 1928, they had gone down from 62 ships to 20. Now, I one time was teaching this and had somebody that started to tell me, well, let me tell you why they went from 62 to 20, and that's fine. Meaning like maybe there weren't the wars going on after that, but after, you know, to 1928, so they could reduce, that's fine. But that's not the point. The point is the number of ships they had in commission went from 62 down to 20. So it reduced by 67%. The number of men in the Royal Navy went from 146,000 in 1914 to 100,000 in 1928, so reduced by 30%. Then when you start to get to dockyard workers, went from 57,000 up to 62,000. Dockyard officials and clerks went from 3,200 up to 4,500, so up 40%. And the Admiralty officials went from 2,000 to 3,569, or up 78%. So those last two columns added together, you know, it's huge increase in the number of people. Specifically, the higher up you went in the chain, the more people there were. Yet, look at what happened to the number of ships and officers and men.
They had less, obviously, for the numbers, less ship, but at the end, the people were more for less ship.
Yeah, so why?
That's
Why?
bad management.
Well, that is, now you know why I said See Northcott Parkinson's kind of became this business consultant to help businesses to see. Now, here's the thing. Every company, our own included, which actually we just went through this in December in terms of making reductions. Every company, if not managed closely, what will happen is the upper management will become top heavy. You end up having more people at the top than you really need. And where that comes from, by the way, is just kind of like, you'll be sitting in a meeting and be like, you know what we ought to do is we ought to get somebody to do blah, blah, blah. You come up with some new idea. And then once you come up with this new idea, then what happens is they go, well, who's going to do it? And everybody sitting at the table is like, well, I'm too busy, whether they are or not. I'm too busy. And so then you go hire somebody else. And just over time, if you don't manage it closely. So now how does that relate to you in real estate? For you in real estate, that same concept will happen. If you're not careful, you'll end up spending money on things that you really are not doing anything, or time, you will spend your time doing things that don't have an impact on your business. Okay. So that's the first thing that he found out, is looking at this. This is what happened. He figured out the reason that the Admiralty and officials is so high is because work expands to fill the time available for its completion. Well, you had all of these people in 1914 in the military, and now all of a sudden we don't have as many ships. People start to get promotions, all that kind of stuff. It just becomes very top heavy. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing that he found, and my clicker is not working again. I got it to work and then it stopped.
The clicker didn't getting message. Well,
I know, I did not understand. All right, that's okay. So here's the next one. So the second thing that he figured out was this, by observing the Royal Navy, is time spent on any item of the agenda will be in inverse proportion to its importance. So time spent on any item of an agenda will be in inverse proportion to its importance. Now, so let me relate that to you in real estate. As far as you in real estate, the time you spend on your activities in real estate are going to be, if you don't manage, then keep in mind, this is if you don't manage it, the time you spend in real estate working will be in inverse proportion to its importance. Okay, so what does that mean?
Hard to understand.
Okay, good. I'll help you.
Too much time is spent on something that is not that important.
That's it. Exactly. What will happen is we will spend most of our time on things that are not important, that are not going to contribute to your business. And we spend very little time on things that are. So I'll show you what I mean. So let's go to the next slide here. But I'm going to actually show you a real world example of this that took place in Boston. Okay. In just a minute. But first, we got one other piece I want to put in place. So the next piece of this that we have to understand as we go through, and in order for you guys to use this tool that I'm going to give to you, is this is the Pareto principle. You've heard it always as the 80-20 rule. So everybody has heard of the 80-20. That came about by a guy by the name of Vilfredo Pareto. Vilfredo Pareto was an Italian economist. And what he found is that 80% of the production comes out of 20%. What he was studying was factories. And 80% of the production came out of 20% of the factories, which meant the other 80% of the factories were contributing to 20% of the production. Well, that same thing happens with you in terms of our business, which is tied back to this law of triviality. So what it's saying is this chart that I'm showing you here, these two bars on the far left here are the activities that if you did them would make you the most amount of money. The red line is how much time we spend on them. So you can see we spend the least amount of time on the two most important things. I'm gonna give it to you. Yeah, this is all a commercial to keep you staying engaged.
He's building the
I'm building
inside.
up to the crescendo, yeah. So the other 80% of those things though, which is where we spend most of our time, end up not actually making us any money.
Right.
So-
Yeah,
So those bars, those gray bars represent.
activities, nothing
activities.
specific. I guess just a
Yes.
chart I threw up there.
But those two up there are the money making ones.
Yeah, and there's actually more than two, and we're gonna go through them. I'm gonna give you all the things
Okay.
that are the money makers that you should be doing. That's what we're gonna do. And I'm gonna show you how to keep track of it, so you know, am I being effective with my time? And here's the thing, in real estate, so I've spent the last over 15 years training new agents mostly, but a lot of agents, but mostly new agents, how to get their business up and running. What I have observed is most fail, and they fail because they don't apply what we're going to talk about today. So for you guys that are newer, like I'm just like begging you, if you'll use this tool, you'll be successful.
Okay,
Okay, all right. So now let me give you an example of this about how how items of an agenda tend to be in inverse proportion to their importance. Now, again, just to make sure, in terms of you and real estate, the time you spend at work is typically going to be in inverse proportion to its importance. You're going to spend the most amount of time on things that don't have an impact on your production, or they have a very little impact. And you're going to spend very little time doing the things that have a huge impact on your business. Okay. Now, so just to give you an example of this though, so I'm going to share with you a study, and I can't tell you the name of the study because it'll give away part of the punchline that I'm going to give to you here in a second, but the Boston School District. So as I set the stage for this though, who makes up school district boards? So if the people who are on a board for the school district, who makes that board up? Any idea?
Administrators, I think they have to have, don't they have to have a percentage of teacher, principals, administrators?
But who is mostly?
They have to have somebody from the outside.
Yeah, most of the time, most of the people on the board, school boards, excuse me. Most of the people on the school boards are parents that just
Yeah.
wanted to get involved. So they run to be, and we vote, and then that's who ends up on the school board. Now, that's important because of what we're going to talk about. So what I'm sharing with you was something that was an article that was shared in the Wall Street Journal about this principle that we're talking about how things are put in inverse proportion to their importance. And I'll tell you the name of the study, but just not yet. Okay. So what happened was this. The school district board was going to have a meeting. And on the meeting, there were two items on the agenda. One was a $1.5 million annex. So they were going to be doing some construction, adding on to a school. Okay. So, and that was going to cost $1.5 million for what they wanted to do. The second item that they were going to talk about in this meeting was a $200,000 item. So the first item was this building. They were going to be building a new or adding on to a school. The difference between the high bid and the low bid was $200,000. And the school board ended up accepting the bid that was the high bid. So they paid the high bid when they could have chosen the lower bid, which was $200,000 less. Okay. But they took the high bid. Now, here's the interesting thing though. This was supposed to be a 1-hour meeting. They spent then 57.5 minutes talking about the $200,000 item. And the difference between the high bid and the low bid on that one was $10,000. So make sure you're hearing what I'm saying here. So it was supposed to be a 1-hour meeting. They start the meeting. They decide that they're going to first talk about this $200,000 item. The difference between the high bid and the low bid was $10,000. They spent 57.5 minutes of this what was supposed to be a 1-hour meeting, 57.5 minutes talking about this $200,000 item. And then at the end of that 57.5 minutes, they took the low bid. They spent the other 7.5 minutes because the meeting ran over. They spent the other 7.5 minutes talking about this $1.5 million annex. And they took the high bid. Now. Why? Here's the question for you. First off, let me ask this. So I got two questions. First one is, what do you think they were discussing for 57.5 minutes that they then saved $10,000 on? What would you guess? And you guys on Zoom can guess too. So
It
we'll,
was on interesting, or maybe they were more familiar with that.
okay, good. Actually, Luz just landed on it. So in case you didn't hear what she said, so she didn't say the item, but she said the reason why, and say it again, was what?
Because they were more interested, or they were more familiar with that item than the other one.
So that is the answer. They were more familiar with this one. So what do you think it was that they argued for 57.5 minutes about? Now, keep in mind,
Parents.
these are mostly parents. It's not the administrators and all that are on the school board.
It's their budget.
Lunch.
You're on the right track saying
Pay the
lunch.
contractor, he provides the food. I mean, I'm thinking, what can a parent be interested in?
You're on the right track saying lunch, but it's not the lunch. Well, it's kind of in a roundabout way.
Buildings,
Nope.
you said lunch.
Because I'm thinking, what would they be interested? I'm thinking food, what is my child eating?
Supplies.
Okay, you're on the right track. Here's what it was. They spent 57.5 minutes talking about toilet paper, arguing about, should we get 2-ply or 3-ply or 1-ply or what kind of this, what kind of that? They spent 57.5 minutes arguing about toilet paper and then said, let's go with the low bid. Now, here's the thing, which Luz already answered this, but why did they then, within 7.5 minutes, end up going with the high bid?
Because they have no clue what they were doing.
That is exactly right.
Right, they had
That
no more time.
Yep, that's exactly right. Because these are parents who don't know a whole lot about building codes and earthquake codes and what type of material you should use for the this or the that. What they landed on is, well, let's just go with the high bid, because stop and think about it. This is parents and they're thinking, well, we want the best for our kids, but we
Right.
can argue about toilet paper.
Right,
Now, we can argue about toilet paper and they couldn't argue the other. We all understand toilet paper, and Luz, you said it. At the end of the day, it's because we're familiar with it.
Yeah.
It's what we're
Mhm.
most familiar with. Now let's go back to though on this again. So now with that in mind, let me back up here. In terms of you, and again, like I said, regardless of how long you have been in the business, this is going to be a challenge for you off and on. And even to some extent, for reasons of like, so over the holidays, I didn't work out as much as I probably should have been working out. And I told my wife this morning, after working out, I was like, oh, it's amazing how just taking a couple of weeks off, how hard it is to get back into the routine again. Well, that same concept happens for you in real estate too. As you quit doing, and that's where the slumps come from, by the way. Typically, when you're in a slump in real estate, it's because you're not doing the things that you should be doing.
Somewhere else.
That's right. So what's going to happen just naturally, because it's human nature, is that we are going to want to spend our time on things that are familiar to us that may not actually generate income for us. So we will spend a lot of time on things that we're familiar with and very little time on the things we're not familiar with that actually would make a huge impact on your business. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay, good. So now let me go back to this. So in terms of you and real estate, what are the things that we are most familiar with? What are the things in terms of you and real estate that are easy to do and it's easy to fill up our day doing it?
Come to class.
Perfect. Coming to class. Now, don't everybody on Zoom, don't drop off the class because of that. Then you guys don't walk out. Yeah, but because you do need to be trained, but what you're saying is right on, Lisa, is you gotta.
Zoom in, see everybody.
No, I will say more than the class. time that we spend like socializing with
Okay, good.
others.
So
more than
coming to
class.
class is one, socializing with other agents, good. What else are the things we spend our time doing that we're familiar with? That it's not scary, it's not hard.
Reviewing our files.
That's right, going on and saying, I gotta get more familiar with the MLS and I need to learn how, I mean. I need to learn Moxie, not picking on you, but like
Yeah.
using that as an excuse of, well, I gotta use
They
Moxie.
have to.
Yeah, I mean, you do, that's just it. Like I say, you do need to, but we'll talk
It
about,
should be in proportion to.
that's right.
Because
Again,
The bar.
it's back to, it should be in proportion to its importance.
and
Mhm.
the reason I was speaking on Moxie is because my leads have fallen by the website,
Wait,
wayside, and I'm thinking, yes, I am calling or I'm prospecting, and then I put my seats, and that's it, my sack has a big hole. And
yeah,
what
no
happened?
question. Yeah, like I said, no question, you have to learn how to use the MLS, you gotta learn how to write the offers, you gotta learn how to use Moxie. Like all of that stuff we have to do, we just have to spend our time on it in proportion to its importance.
All right.
Does that make sense? So yeah,
Yes.
100%, we gotta do that. All right, good. So now let's do this. What are the things you're least familiar with in real estate?
People on the street, we have no idea what they are going to say.
Okay, so prospecting,
Yes, because that's one of the things, there's this phone, and when you pick up, you don't know what kind of mood, what kind of objections this person, this human being that is on the other side of the line might have. And we're not familiar with it, or.
That's right.
Or, okay, case in point, before I came to Century 21, I was not very well acquainted with objections, with the scripts,
yep,
with all those kind of things, none of it.
right,
So to me, right now, I'm becoming familiar, and I'm trying to spend my time, that's why I didn't come into the role play anymore.
sure, yeah, no, that's
through
why we get.
Zoom or here or whatever.
Well, and again, I want to be really clear. The reason we offer all that stuff is because we know, yes, you definitely do need it. You got to sharpen the saw. You got to get ready for, you have to know how to do the things, no question.
Because in fact, before I came to this class today, I was thinking today in the morning, I'm thinking I need to really, the bulk of my time, do the prospecting really,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Even if I'm saying.
That's
the
where
wrong-
we're getting to.
Even if I'm saying not the right thing, because I'm not very well
Yes.
familiar yet.
Yep. But that's the point. So good. So what else besides just prospecting are things that we are least familiar with?
I'm familiar with knocking on doors.
Okay.
That was my job for 25 years.
Okay,
I had a purpose. The government was sending me out there.
okay,
And I had dogs sick on me.
Yeah.
I had people just. I was the woman they loved to hate, tax collector,
okay.
but still I had a different purpose.
Yep.
Now I'm out. I'm going to have, but let's face it, you can fill your day. This literally fills my day. Well, I have to get my things in.
That's right.
order.
Yeah, no, that's why we're doing this whole class is I want you to understand is it is human nature to be like, and part of that is our brain is designed to protect us. And going and talking to strangers is all of a sudden our limbic brain is kind of like, whoa, hold on, we gotta like,
The social
yeah, we gotta protect ourselves and we might get hurt or whatever. So that's so good. How about going on presentations, doing a listing presentation? How familiar are you with that?
Well, to get to that point, we have to prospect.
Well, I know you got to prospect first, no question, but like stop and think about how familiar are like that kind of stuff. How about writing contracts if you've never written on the REPC? Like all of those things are what we are least familiar with. And again, keep in mind that so Aubrey, the part you missed here is work expands to fill the time available for its completion. So keep that in mind. What we're talking about is work is going to expand the time available for its completion, and we're going to spend that time, we're going to fill that time on the things that are least important, that will make the least amount of and probably not least important, shouldn't say that will make the least amount of an impact on your income. And we spend the most amount of our time on the things, on the things that are not going to have a big impact on our income. Does that make sense? Okay. So with that in mind, then let me fast forward here again. we're gonna now we'll get into this tool that I said I would give to you guys.
Oh, yeah.
So here's the thing, what I call this is a tip analysis, okay? And I have a paper that I'm gonna give to you guys, that at least the ones who showed up in person, the guys on Zoom, like, I don't know what you guys are gonna do about it. but-
They're not allowed.
Yeah, we'll vote and see if they should get a copy or not, right? All right, so here we go. So I'm gonna give to you what we call this tip analysis. So tip is an acronym. And in some ways, I've wondered if I should actually call it PINT, P-I-N-T, because there is an N that we're gonna use too that is not in the tip, but you'll see why I haven't done that yet. So, okay, so let's talk about tip analysis. Tip is an acronym. The T stands for your total amount of time. So one of the things that you need to do, and like I said, I'm going to give you a paper here that you can do this on, but there's no magic in the paper. Just know part of what you need to do is you need to keep track every week of what is the total amount of time you spent working in real estate. Okay. So that's what the T stands for, is how many hours did I work in real estate? And you can define that. Like for me, when I first started that, no, not just here at the office. So for me, here's how I define it. Now, I'm not saying you have to define it this way, but when I first started in real estate, or let me back that up. When I first learned this tool, so I had been in real estate for 2, maybe even 3 years by the time I learned this. But when I learned this tool, how I kept track of it was if my phone was on, like meaning if somebody called me about real estate, I was going to answer the phone, then I was working. So whether I was at home, I was out to dinner or whatever, and part of why I say that you want to do it that way is to some extent, like earlier on in my real estate career, if my wife and I went out on a date on a Friday night to dinner or something, and my phone rang, I was answering it and doing, like it might be somebody who wants to buy a house or they might want to sell or whatever. And I would answer the phone. If you're going to answer your phone and or be doing real estate, it counts as like part of your total time. So it doesn't matter if you're here at the office, it's, are you working on real estate? So
Yeah, like if we're grocery shopping and then we are prospecting, we're talking the real estate to people around us.
yep. Yeah, if you go groceries to the grocery store, but you're talking to people about real estate, then yeah, I would count it. And you'll see why that might not be a bad thing though. That could be actually a good thing. And I'll show you what I mean by that, okay?
Would you count the education time in that total time? Or
Yes.
total time that's working?
No, great question. I would count that as part, yeah. Being here in class, it counts as part of your total time. Yeah,
Thank you.
great question. Yep. So kind of just think of it as like when I'm working and like I say, for the most part, there's no advantage. In fact, one of the things on this paper that I'm going to give to you guys on the side here, it says power comes out of telling the truth. That's one of my mantras. Power comes out of telling the truth. And so just kind of keep in mind, like, because of how real estate works, and you could, in fact, you guys on Zoom are probably at home. You could very easily be like, well, that doesn't count then because I'm actually at home. But like, just kind of keep in mind, power comes out of telling the truth. The way that this is going to be an effective tool for you is error on the side of yes, I was working, then instead of error on the side of I wasn't working. Because if you err on the side of I was working, counting that as a work thing, this will be more effective for you than if you err on the side the other way. If you err the other way, it'll look like, oh yeah, I'm really productive, but then you'd have no money. So it's power comes out of telling the truth. Okay, so good. So the first thing we have to keep track of is our total time that we are spending in real estate. Next, the I stands for indirectly productive. Okay, now I'm going to define all of this for you here in just a minute of exactly what is indirectly productive. That one's actually pretty easy. The next one that on this tip, the acronym, the P stands for being productive. Okay. And then finally, the N stands for non-productive. Now, here's the key thing, and I'm going to say this a bunch today. Non-productive is not the same thing as not important. Okay. Non-productive does not equal not important. There are things that you're going to do in real estate that are non-productive, but they're highly important. Okay, so don't hear non-productive as that means it's not important.
So
That is not what that means.
So we are saying productive meaning is generating
It's what's,
income.
it's gonna get you money.
Alright.
And part of how I would say, well, here, I'll give you an example of it. Non-productive is being here in class.
Yeah.
This class right now is non-productive. Now, that again, doesn't mean it's not important. Because same thing with learning how to fill out a contract, non-productive. But very important, meaning filling out the contract, non-productive, but it's very important that you do it. Does that make sense? So just because we're saying non-productive does not mean not important. Go ahead.
I like the way you said that too, but it also reminds me that. Cause I'll trick myself into thinking that, oh, I'm doing all this cool stuff like, technology, setting up all this other stuff. Admin for like 3 hours,
Yep.
in the middle of prospecting day. And it's not, it's not productive, it's not that it's not important, but
It's important, but it's non-productive.
Yeah, and it can overtake you like so easy. So,
Very.
It's important, I gotta do all this stuff.
Yep. That's what we're talking about. So I'm gonna give you the tool though to track that so that you can know, I've gotten off track. That's the main thing to keep in mind with this tool is there to help you see I've gotten off track and I need to get back on track.
So
Yep.
my total time has equaled my.
Non-productive, that's not unusual, FYI.
Oh,
Especially as a new agent, that is not unusual for your total time and non-productive time to be equal. But that's the whole point of this, though, is once you become aware of it, now we can do something about it. Once we're aware, and that's the importance of tracking this and using this tool, is as you track it, it forces you to be like, okay, I got to do better. And I'm going to tell you how it impacted me in my career and what it did as well in just a second here. All right. So let's talk about now in terms of productive. So what are the productive things that we can do? Now, before you answer, let me explain something to you that an attorney, if they are working, they have to create so many billable hours in their day. So an attorney working for a law firm has billable hours. So like they have this tool and a system that like if they're working on your file or your case, whatever it is, they have a little timer that they hit a button and then while they're working, they have to every 6 minutes account for what were they doing during that 6 minute time frame. Okay. And the idea then is an attorney has to come up with so many billable hours. So let's say if they had to come up with 8 billable hours in a day, they might have to work 12 hours to get 8 billable hours. Okay. So for them, that's what would be productive. So now let's talk about for us. What for us would be things that would be productive that would then actually make us money.
Prospecting, number one.
And sorry, I was going to say this before you said it, Lou. Sorry. Prospecting is not one of them.
A closing.
Believe it or not, prospecting is not productive.
That sounds
I'm not
weird.
yours.
Well,
A closing.
you'll see in a second why, because really, I'll show you in a second, but indirectly, prospecting is indirectly productive. It's not productive, it's indirectly
is
productive.
it what comes after signing somebody?
Okay, good. Yes, good. You just landed on, I've got more than that, but that is what Lisa just said nails all of these. So let's look at them. Okay. So listing appointments would be productive time. Buyer appointments, productive time. Showing property to a buyer who has signed a buyer broker agreement, productive. Getting a price reduction, productive. Writing offers, productive. Negotiating offers, productive. Closing. That's it. In terms of, so now again, the reason I bring up the whole attorney idea thing is for you to see if you were an attorney and you were expected to have 8 billable hours, which again, nobody, if you had 8 hours a day doing all of this stuff, you're going to make a ton of money. So I'm not saying there's an expectation for you to spend 8 hours on this, but what I'm saying is these would be the equivalent of your billable hours.
Mhm.
Okay, so these are the things that ultimately think of it this way, even. Imagine if I spent 8 hours every day just going from one closing to the next. How cool would this job be? And how much money would you make if all day, every day, you were just closing?
But Rose, that's a great idea, but it's like trying to go and harvest flowers from my garden. How cool will I be if I
Right.
go and just bring all these beautiful flowers? But they are not going to appear by magic. I have to.
Okay, good. No, you're right on. You're right on. But what I'm wanting you to see though is the reason these things are what we consider to be productive is because imagine if all day long, that's all you did is went from one closing to the next. Ton of money.
All your hard work.
That's right. Or, but even if you didn't all day long go to closings, imagine if you had though 8 hours every day that you went from a listing appointment to a buyer appointment, to you showed a property to a buyer that signed a buyer broker, you got a price reduction on a listing, you wrote an offer, you negotiated an offer, like you would make a ton of money in this business, right? That's why these are the productive things that we can do, okay? Now, with that, let's now look at, which I already gave you the answer to this, but indirectly productive. Indirectly productive, so on our tip analysis, the indirectly productive is prospecting.
Setting appointments.
Yep, and that is tied to what you brought up, Luz, is, yeah, it'd be great if you could go out to if all we did is went to closings, or you went out to your garden and just picked flowers all day long, but you got to do something to get them, which that's the point of this, is in terms, the way we get this productive stuff to do is through,
Prospecting.
exactly.
Because I was thinking, isn't that the word that what's it, George has hammering our brains?
Yes, prospect. And the reason he hammers into your brain prospect is because without prospecting, you're not going to do any of these things.
Right.
At the end of the day, without prospecting, this is not going to happen.
It's not gonna-
So we have to prospect. So now I'm going to show you what this looks like here in just a second, okay? So, all right, now, what's non-productive then?
Be on Instagram.
Everything else. So here's the thing. If you didn't see it listed here or here, and you're doing it, it's non-productive. Now, again, keep in mind, non-productive does not mean not important. I do not expect you guys to have 100% of your time spent productively. Again, I would love it if all you did is went from closing to closing to closing. Be awesome. But that's also probably a little bit unrealistic, right? So as a result of that, here's what we want to be looking at. And I'm going to show you how to do this. So once we're done with this PowerPoint here, I'm going to put the screen up and we're going to write on the board. But if you took your productive time and you added that to your indirectly productive time. So this is the secret. So remember I told you, so you, Lisa, both you and Luz, I think both have been like, so what is it? What is it? We're getting there. Okay. This is it. If you took the amount of time you spent being productive, so remember productive is, let me back up. I just realized I didn't say one thing on this, which Lisa kind of already said it, but what do all of these have in common? The listing appointment, a buyer appointment, showing property, price reductions, writing offers, negotiating, closing. What
Implies that we have clients to work with.
Okay, but it's more than that even. Because, and I can't remember how you said it, but you said it
As a
right.
result of the prior work.
I can't remember how you said it. Yeah, but essentially that's what it is, Aubrey, is essentially, and I can't remember how you said it, but you said that basically. Notice what happens. What do you hope will happen at the end of a listing appointment? They're going to sign the exclusive right to represent. What about a buyer appointment? What are you hoping to have happen? Sign a buyer broker. You go out and show properties to somebody who's signed a buyer broker. What do you hope happens? Write an offer. You go to meet with a seller to get a price reduction. You hope they sign it to do that. You write an offer, hope obviously, right? Negotiating offers, you're hoping to get a signature of acceptance. Closing, they signed it. Like notice all of the productive things, what they have in common is typically, not always, but typically you're face-to-face
Mm-hmm.
and going to ask for a signature at the end of the appointment. So the way that you know if an appointment is productive or not is
Signature.
not, and it's not, did you get the signature? It's not that, but it's, did you go to the appointment with the intention of getting the signature? So I don't care if you got the signature or not. If you went there with the intention of, hey, I'm gonna have them sign something, it's a productive appointment. If you're meeting just to meet, then it's prospecting. That's an indirectly productive, okay? Now, so with that, let me go back to here. What we want to keep track of, so I already told you, we want to keep track of our total time that we've worked. Then we want to keep track of that total time, how much of it was productive. So that list that we just looked at. And add to that, how much of it was indirectly productive, our prospecting. And those two added together should equal 60% of your time. And in fact, let me say it this way. If you find that your time is spent with it being less than 50% between productive and indirectly productive, you're off track. Okay?
Say that again.
If you are tracking your time and you find at the end of the week, you have written down your total time, then from that, you look at how much of that total was spent productively, how much was spent indirectly productive, and if it's less than 50% is productive and or indirectly productive, you're off track. Now, don't feel bad, but just know that's a sign of, okay, I got to spend more time doing, which again, let me back up to here. Ideally, I want to spend all of my time doing these things. But what we already talked about is I can't do those unless I do this.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have none of these to do, what should I spend my time doing? 50% of my time doing?
Indirect.
Prospecting.
Indirect.
Yeah,
Prospect.
indirectly productive stuff. That's right. Okay. Now, I'm going to give you more detail on this here in just a second, but just kind of keep in mind, that's what we're looking for. Yeah.
So let's say you're down the road and you do have all those good things coming. You really have to have a balance. You really do have to track your time, because you can't let those things go to those things with the intent of having a signature and go, oh, well, I can't meet with you. I have to go prospect.
Yeah, so that's good. Although I would
Let's have
say,
balance.
yeah, there's got to be no question. There's got to be balance. But part of what I'm going to say to you is keep in mind, you should treat your prospecting time equally important, and sometimes more important than even
You gotta keep that coming
This.
in, or that will
Mhm.
run.
That's
dry.
right. That's right. And I'll show you what that looks like here. All right. Now, if you're spending less than 60%, but really, like I said, if you're between 50 and 60, you're probably okay. But if you're less than 50% of your time between I time and P time, indirectly productive and productive. So probably for the rest of the day, you're going to hear me call I time, or excuse me, indirectly time, I time, and productive time, P time. Okay. So the hard part with that is sometimes I say P time and people assume prospecting. P time is not prospecting. That's indirect. Yep. Okay. So if you're spending less than 60% of your time in indirectly productive I time or P time, you need to spend more time prospecting. Okay. All right. So now let's go through and talk about, I'm going to give to you what the ideal schedule should look like. Now, keep in mind, I also understand the number of you that are going to be able to follow exactly this schedule is probably few, but I'm going to give to you what Brian Burnett, who is our top agent, going to make, or probably made over $3 million last year. This is basically his schedule. Okay. So 7 o'clock is role play. So for Brian Burnett, while he's driving to the office, and I think if I remember right, the last time I heard him talk about it, is he starts role play at 7:15. But here at the office, we have it available on Zoom, or you can come be here in person, role play, right? Oh, I got to update that. Morning Ascent then starts at 7:30. Then we have, Morning Ascent from 7:30 till about 8:15. But by 9 o'clock, basically, you should be prospecting. And that's Brian Burnett in St. George. He is before 9 o'clock, he's on the phone prospecting. But by 9, you should be prospecting. Okay. Prospect basically from 9 until noon. If then after, go do lunch. After lunch, from 1 o'clock till 2 o'clock should be lead follow-up. So that's still prospecting, but you're now doing your lead follow-up. So the idea is like from 9 to noon is trying to generate new business. 1 o'clock till 2 o'clock is now I'm following up on people who have said, yeah, we've thought about it, or we might do it. And then 2 o'clock till 3 o'clock should be your appointment prep time. So you're getting ready for your appointments. Now, here's what typically happens though, and I'm just as guilty of this. Like the reason I can talk about this so well is because I've done it all. Like I'm almost the creator of not this schedule, but of the not following this schedule. Okay. So because what happens is we're prospecting between 9 and noon. Have you ever done this, Aubrey? You get an appointment with somebody to go list their house and you're like, I better go do a CMA. And you stop and you go start working on a CMA. No, 2 o'clock is when you work on your CMA. 9 to noon, you keep prospecting. That makes sense? Although I know it's difficult, especially if you're new, because you're like, well, I don't even know what I'm going to say, or how I don't know what their house is worth. I need to go do a CMA. And we want to stop prospecting, but just follow this as the schedule and go, okay, I got to do my appointment prep. Now, I'll say more about this schedule if you're like, well, I can't do that. And that's fine. 3 o'clock should be your first appointment. 5 o'clock is your next appointment. So, and again, remember, Brian Burnett's making over $3 million following this. And then typically he's home by 6 o'clock every day.
Wow,
Okay.
that's still a big day.
It is a big day. I don't want to take away from that for sure. But if you don't have an appointment at 3 or 5, you should stop by or call 2 for sale by owners and 2 expired listings every day. So if you don't, so those 3 and 5 o'clock appointment spots, if you don't have an appointment, does that mean, well, I just go home?
No.
No, did you say you do?
I do go home, but I get so dark, I'm like, dang it, but I do call them at like later and I follow like my SLI later at night.
Okay, good. That's great.
So it's
Yeah. So here's the key thing. Here's what I want to make sure you guys understand. It's not so important that you follow this exact schedule, but here's what's important. You need to have built into your schedule, whatever your schedule is going to be, some time to role play, participating in Morning Ascent. When are you going to prospect? When are you going to do your lead follow-up? When are you going to do appointment prep? And when are you going to do appointments? If you'll build a schedule, it doesn't matter that you follow this. Like I know one agent that, and I shouldn't say, I use the term I know her, like I know of her is really more what it is. But I heard her speak one time and she talked about that she is home by 3 o'clock every day. And she was making over $1 million a year in real estate. And she was home by 3 o'clock every day. Her appointments. So my point being is you can adjust the schedule a little. The way she did it was her first appointment was at 11 a.m. and then she would do lunch. And then her second appointment for the day was always at 1 o'clock. And then she would finish up whatever she needed to and be home by 3 because she was a single mom and had a daughter that was in school. And she's like, I want to be home for my daughter when she gets home from school at 3. So you can build your schedule. Just know you don't have to follow exactly this because what you said, Lisa, there are very few people that are like, yeah, I'm going to work 11 hours every day, but that's fine. But you still got to figure out when are you going to prospect, when are you going to do lead follow-up, when you do your appointment prep, and when are you going to do your appointments. And then here's the key thing again, come back to, let me back up here. What you're looking for in you building this schedule is you need to build your schedule to where 60% of the time you spend at work. See, here's the key thing. You're not going to hear me tell you, you have to work X number of hours. I would never say that. But what I am telling you is whatever total hours you are going to work, 60% of that time needs to be spent between productive and indirectly productive. So in fact, I know one agent that I trained in this, that you've heard me talk about her before, but she worked 20 hours a week. She had an assistant that she paid to work 20 hours a week too. So keep that in mind. But in 20 hours a week, she made over $300,000 a year because she made sure that of that 20 hours, 60% of it was doing productive or indirectly productive things. See, that's more important is the percentage than the total time. Now, with that being said, like if somebody came to me and goes, all right, well, I get it now. So I'm going to work 5 hours a week and I'll just make sure that 3 of the 5 hours are spent prospecting. Like that's probably not going to work. Like you might have to spend more than 5 hours a week. And so how many you need to spend, but you gotta put a decent amount of time into it.
Well, I just was thinking that it's interesting in your other slide, the one that you have the schedule. The analysis.
Oh, yeah,
That one. I was just thinking that it's interesting that it follows what George was saying. Because he says that if we exercise, we practice, which is the role play, and we prospect before noon,
yeah,
He
everything
says-
else will be fine.
yes.
Everything else will work out.
That's right.
Yeah, so did you guys on Zoom here, Liz, on that?
Yeah,
Yeah, so that is exactly right. The most important thing is what you do up until noon. After that, if you do this, if you, at the end of the day, the reason why George hits prospect, if you prospect, your appointment prep and appointment time slots and all that will take care of themselves. You don't have to worry about that. If you're prospecting, that other stuff, you'll do it. So, all right. So now we're not done, but any questions so far? Yes.
As far as lead follow-up, is that, I mean, like, should we have a time slot for that? And I saw that in there.
You could, it's really kind of up to you as far as, do you want to do lead follow-up as a, yeah, are you gonna do it part of your 9 to noon, which you could do, for sure. You could do that.
I tried it, well, this is like, you know. I try to, I mean, I go out, I do it not a lot. Like on the mornings, I don't see a lot of people on first, definitely just in the mornings, on like weekdays.
Yeah.
So I'm shifting, it's probably more of the first question I ask inside, but I shifted towards, you know, calling for July owners and calling, you know, people in the mornings, they call in the mornings.
Okay.
And then prospecting in the afternoons where people are,
Yeah.
you know, more, okay.
Yeah, that's great. Like I said, the most important thing to me, here's the thing, is when I'm asked that type of a question, at the end of the day, for me, anytime you will prospect is the best time to prospect. If you'll do it, it's the best. I can only say for me personally, I just found it when I did it, and again, I'm just speaking personally, that I'm not saying for you. Because if you'll do it that way, that's awesome. Do it. It works. I just found for me, and again, I'm not saying everybody's this way, but for me personally, if I tried to do it in the afternoon, like how you're doing it, I probably wouldn't have. Most days I would have, work expands to fill the time available for its completion. I would have figured out a way to not do it. So that's just me though. So if you're doing it that way and it works, like I say, the most important thing is build the schedule and make sure you've got that in there. And then if you can follow that schedule, perfect. It'll work. It will work. Like at the end of the day, for me, like if you came to me and said, Russ, can you coach me on it? I would say, yeah, fill out this paper. Let me see where you're spending your time. And as long as you're hitting 60% between indirectly productive and productive, I'd be like, perfect. I don't care when you do it. Doesn't matter to me. You just got to do it.
I just was thinking about the agent that you said that she worked 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that mostly without even knowing her, that mostly what she did was prospecting, because if she was doing
Right.
3 hours a day, that would be 15 hours of prospecting and just 5 hours left for whatever.
Yeah, you got it. So look, think of it this way. Here's how I want you to think of it. So I'm going to just put. So for you guys on Zoom, and actually you guys sitting in the room that can't read my handwriting even, but what this says is productive, indirectly productive, and non-productive. Now, here's what you'll find. If you were to do what I'm asking you to do, which is keep track of your time. And what you did was kept track of your time, and then every day you look back and say, okay, of my day spent, how much of my day was spent productively? And you want to keep track of it in 15-minute increments. So was it a quarter of an hour, a half an hour, whatever it was, or 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever it was productively, put that in. Then you're going to take your indirectly productive and write it down. Then you add those two together and divide it into the total number of hours worked, you're going to get the percentage. And whatever that percentage is, let's say that it was 60%. What does that automatically mean you spent in terms of non-productive?
40.
40%, yeah. So that's why I remember I said we call it a tip analysis, and I don't really worry about the end. The reason I don't worry about the non-productive is as long as you're worried about this number, this one takes care of itself. So like track still you're non-productive, but what's most important is this. Okay,
So is this agent still working?
Yeah.
You need to invite her over for. No, really, how can somebody achieve that degree?
Student assistant.
yeah, she hadn't, so that's where I'm headed right now, is I
Yeah.
want to show you how she did it.
Alright,
How she did it was this, think of it this way. And the numbers I'm gonna show you on this probably have actually increased, so it's probably higher than what I'm gonna say, because think about what our prices have done in the past 2 years. But in terms of your productive time, if you took at the end of the year what your income was from real estate and you divided it into the total number of hours you spent productively,
Mhm.
you're gonna probably end up, and I know this doesn't totally make sense, but just to give you an idea though, if I took my total income and divided it into the number of hours I spent productively, because that's really where we make the money, what you're gonna find is you make somewhere between $750 and $1,000 an hour, and it's probably higher than that now, actually. But every hour that you spend face to face in front of somebody that you're gonna ask them to sign something, think of it as you're getting paid somewhere between $750 and $1,000 an hour. And honestly, it might be even closer to $2,000 an hour now, but
even the ones that didn't sign, the ones that
correct, yeah, because
didn't get a listing or whatever.
yeah, because all you're tracking is the times you were, now remember, you only get it counted as productive if you went to the appointment expecting you're gonna ask them to sign something.
Yeah,
Doesn't mean
but-
they did.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Doesn't matter if they did, that's still productive. Now, let's come over here for a minute. Let's talk about what are some of the non-productive things? We already talked about go to class, blah, blah, blah. Okay, like doing a CMA, where should that fit in here?
Non-productive.
Yeah.
Non-productive.
non-productive. Now, and here's the thing. So now you go back to Tonya that we were talking about. If you hired an assistant to work for you, could you have them create a CMA for you? Could you teach them how to do it? And
Yeah,
so how much would you have to pay the assistant to go create a CMA for you?
$20?
Hopefully not.
Per hour. Yeah, so like per hour-ish,
Not 700.
Yeah, not 750.
maybe 20,
Yes.
25?
Yeah, maybe 25, yeah.
You think, yeah, I mean,
I
I
have
don't
no
know.
idea. Yeah.
Somewhere in that range is probably
Yeah.
realistic. So hopefully what you're seeing here is when you're prospecting and you get an appointment to go list somebody's house and you quit doing an activity that pays you between $750 and $1,000 an hour and go do one that costs that essentially you're getting paid $20 an hour to do. Hopefully what you're seeing, what I'm saying here is like,
Smart.
even though we feel like, oh, I just got an appointment, I should go get prepared for the appointment. Like to some extent, you should wait because you're interrupting something that's gonna pay you $750,000 an hour to go work as a $20 an hour employee.
right,
Does that make
Right.
sense?
yeah,
Yeah. So that's part, so when you asked, how did she do it? Well, how did she do it? She understood this. She went and hired somebody and said, you're gonna work 20 hours a week. And I don't know what she paid her because it was her sister, so she might have paid her more than this. But I guarantee you, she didn't pay her $150,000. Tonya made over 300. I promise you, she did not pay her part-time sister 100,000 even.
She did.
Well, I'm just looking at you and looking at you because I'm thinking, who can I hire to do that kind of thing?
Well, and so here's the key. I love what you're thinking, Luz. The key thing is though, is are you gonna do this at 60%? Because don't go hire somebody to come and do this stuff if you're not gonna go do this at 60%.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing that I always say is the thing that I love about this tool, and I'm gonna give you this here in a second, is the way you know when you should hire somebody, because keep in mind, I'm telling you guys already, this is only 60% of your time working. The other 40% spend doing this stuff.
I mean, and of course, for her to get to that point is because she was having the production, she was having the income.
Yeah, she didn't immediately go
Yeah,
hire.
she's having
them.
the income and kind of
But-
like, okay, I want to grow, how can I grow?
But what she did, that's right, is she just said, okay, I'm gonna work 20 hours a week. I've got to be very productive with my time. Therefore, I got to spend it prospecting or on appointments. And so how you know when you should hire an assistant is when you're doing all of this stuff, doing this, and you're at 60% and you don't have time to get this stuff done. When you're running out of the time to get this done because you're spending so much time this, not this. If most of your time is spent of the 60% is prospecting, you don't need an assistant.
No.
It's when all of a sudden you're now spending so much time doing productive, you're out on appointments. Therefore, you got to do, because here's the thing, what Lisa said is this. See, most agents, this is what their real estate career looks like. How long have you been licensed, Aubrey?
Year and 1 month.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were longer than that for some reason. Okay, but this is what, how about you, Luz?
3 years, but
Okay.
this is my first year that I've been doing full time.
That's fine. Most agents' real estate career looks like this. This is what their income looks like. They make a bunch of money, then they don't have any money. Then they make a bunch of money, then they don't have any money. They make a bunch of money, they don't have any. Now, here's why. The reason that happens is they start prospecting. So we do indirectly productive, indirectly productive. Indirectly productive should lead to productive. So now all of a sudden they get some productive time, but they're still doing indirectly productive while they're doing productive time.
That's why that girl did it right, because she was able to keep. the
That's
flow.
right.
It's like
She kept the
scaling
flow.
your business. Kind of.
That's right. So what happens though is, okay, so I go do indirectly productive. I prospect. Prospecting leads to productive. What does productive time lead to?
The appointments and
Well, yeah, but okay, so I go on appointment, I get a listing. Now what do I have to do?
Go to the non-productive. and
I got to go fill out all the paperwork and I got to get the pictures ordered and I got to get it
Yeah,
on the MLS and I got to get the I got to do all,
Okay,
like,
that makes sense.
so now what happens is I start doing this non-productive stuff. And what usually is the first thing to drop out? Because you already said it. Are we ever going to not show up to an appointment?
no.
So if all of a sudden we're busy working, what's the first place we drop out?
Respect.
Indirectly productive or prospecting?
That makes sense.
And so now all we've got is some P time and some N time and P time and N time.
yeah.
And then all of a sudden now, once that deal closes,
You don't have.
now what?
Yeah, you
Gotta
start
get
doing that. Indirect-
So I'm like, oh crap. That's, I call this right here the oh crap moment to be, to be politically correct is, crap, I'm out, now I close. So now what do we do then? We start prospecting again. Prospecting leads to productive time. When the productive time leads to non-productive time, and then we are back in the same cycle. See, that's what happens. And so
That
what
takes work to keep that momentum.
it takes,
going.
well, and what it's gonna take actually is this. What it really takes to fix this is track your time. If you'll keep track. So I'm gonna pull it up online for you guys on Zoom so you can see it. So let me get that pulled up here. And I will send to you, provided that these guys here allow me to, I'll send you a copy. If you'll throw an email address in there. I'm just kidding, I'll get it for you.
Thank you.
And in fact, since there's only a few of you here, I'll give you, here, you guys just. Give you a few. So use this as kind of a, master sheet or whatever, I don't know what you want to call it, but that you can keep track of, that you could then use that to make photocopies. Now, so you'll notice I have it broken down into 15-minute increments. So for you guys on Zoom, you can see the daily work tracker here. I've got power comes out of telling the truth on the side over here. And you can see starting at 7:30 a.m., I've got it in 15-minute increments all the way to 9 a.m. And then at the bottom, you'll notice it has a spot for the T equals. So how many total hours did you work that day? And then of those, how many were I and how many were P? So what you want to do then is this. So I show up at the office, let's just say at, since we got 7:30 is where I've got it starting here, is I show up at 7:30 for morning ascent, so I'm gonna write morning ascent in there. And then off here to the side, I'm gonna write what? An N, an I, or a P for morning ascent. Is morning ascent N, I, or a P?
And
And,
Yeah.
and,
N. Now, remember, that doesn't mean it's not important. I'm not saying don't go to it. It's just that's end time. Okay, so I get done with that and so what's gonna happen here is at 7:45, I'm probably still in morning ascent. So I'm gonna write morning ascent, put it in. At 8 o'clock, depending on who's doing morning ascent, it's either done, or if it's George, it's still going. So I put another in, and at 8:15, it's probably still going. Which, by the way, if I ever do it, and well, I shouldn't commit to that. It'll be done by 8:05. But okay, so now, boom, I'm done with morning ascent. It's now 8:30 and I'm getting ready to prospect. So from 8:30 to 8:45, I write down getting ready to prospect. Is that I, N, or P?
Non-productive.
No problem.
Non-productive. Okay, so now it's 9 o'clock. I get on the phone, I start making calls.
That would be in.
I, yep, so I'm gonna put I time. So I'm just gonna keep track of that. Now, so let me tell you about my experience with this when I first learned this. So when I first learned this, we didn't have smartwatches like we did today, but luckily I had an Ironman triathlete watch because not that I was a triathlete, but I did a lot of running. And so I had a watch that I noticed one day that it had a timer on there. And I could set that timer to every 15 minutes beep. So I went in and set my timer on this Ironman triathlete watch so that when I would walk in, when I started working, I should say, I was going to say when I walked into the office, but when I started working, I would start that timer. And as soon as that timer would start, every time it would beep, I pulled out this piece of paper and I wrote down what I had done since I started the timer. And then the next 15 minutes later, when it beeped, I wrote down again, what had I done since the last time it beeped? So that's all there is to this is you just every 15 minutes, you're writing down, what did you do? And was it I, N, or P? And then at the end of the day, you count up how many I's, N's, and P's you have to total it. Well, actually, notice on there, we don't keep track of the N because it doesn't really matter, meaning it matters, but you'll know what the N is as long as you know what the I and P are.
So in here, what we're trying to track really is the I and the.
Yeah, you're still tracking the non-productive, but you don't have to total it up at the end of the day because as soon as you total up these two and add them together,
it's gonna
whatever's
give you
left
that.
is non-productive. So that's the reason.
So
I don't.
in here is the total time that I was.
Yep, so if you worked, just to keep the math easy, if you worked 10 hours today, you would write down 10. Boom.
And then in here, I should see the 10, which one.
Yeah, you're just saying, okay, of that 10 hours, how many did I spend prospecting or indirectly productive? And how many hours did I spend on appointments that I was face-to-face to ask somebody to sign something? And write that down as your productive time. And then everything else left over is non-productive.
Just put a timer on my watch.
What?
I just put a timer on. my
Oh,
watch.
perfect. Yeah. No, I'm telling you. So now let me tell you where this really hit the road for me. So I started doing that and everybody at the office that I worked in kind of just knew like every 15 minutes they were going to hear my watch beeping and I would then go write it down. Well, one particular Monday, so I had been doing this for about 2 weeks. And after that 2-week period, I was like, okay, this is cool, whatever. But it was a Monday and I had gotten a new listing over the weekend. So I showed up to the office and I start my timer, I'm in the office, I start working. And in the process of that working, my timer goes off and I write down whatever it was I was doing, which I don't remember. But we had this was more like the office was kind of like a strip mall type of a place. So connected right to our office though was the title company. Well, I had gotten this new listing over the weekend and I needed to go over to the title company to order a preliminary title report. So I get done with my prospecting for the day and I stand up to go walk over to the title company to order the preliminary title report. I walk in there and the escrow officer that I used was a guy by the name of Jeff. He's still a really good friend today. But I walked into his office and Jeff is about my age. I mean, within a couple of years. And both of us, our oldest kids are both boys and they're about like his was born in October, mine was in December. Like that's how close in age they were. And it's not like they were friends, but just close in age. So I go walking over to Jeff's office and I'm like, hey, I got a new listing. And he's like, all right, give me the information, give it to him. And then he goes, hey, so how was your weekend? How was the games? Like whatever. And I don't know if it was baseball, football, basketball, what, but he's like, how'd your games go? And I'm like, oh yeah, let me tell you about it. So I tell him about our games and I'm like, what about you guys? How'd your games go? Oh yeah. And we're sitting there talking. And then all the while my watch would be, every 15 minutes. So we're sitting there talking and talking and talking. We get done talking. I still know exactly where I was at in the office. I get done talking to Jeff. I'm walking back to my office. And inside the office where I was at was right by where the bathrooms were. So I'm walking this way. Actually, truthfully, if I was walking this way, but I'm walking this way and the bathrooms are on this side of me. And right as I'm in between the men's and the women's, my watch beeps. And I look down at it and I hit reset. And then my office was like 2 or 3 doors down from the bathroom. So I walked past that. And I'm like, oh, I need to write down. So I pull out my piece of paper and I write down and I notice first off that there's this huge gap because I've been over talking to Jeff. So now, just to see if you guys understand how this works. So I sit down, what am I going to write in this? So it's now like, I don't remember what time it was, but let's say it was like 1:30 and I haven't written down any beeps because I've been over talking to Jeff. So it's not like I carried the paper with me. But I come back and now I've got to account for what I've done. Then I look and there's this big gap. So I write down order PR, talk to Jeff. Now, is ordering a PR and talking to Jeff, where does it fall? Non-productive. Okay. So I have to write down non-productive. Now, here's the thing though. Guess how long I was over talking to Jeff?
2 hours.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
2
it was 2 hours. So when I came back on my piece of paper, all of a sudden I have to write down and I don't remember what time it was, but let's say that it was 1:30. I had to write down from 11:30 to 1:30 end time. Non-productive.
That's how I know.
You what?
I said I know it because I've done it.
You've done it. That's why. That's right. So for me, I was like right in that moment, I stopped and was like, do I really want to spend 2 hours? Like, I love Jeff. Like, he is still a good friend to me today. Called me last week to go to lunch. Still a good friend. Love the guy to death. But right then I was like, I do not want to spend 2 hours of my day, my work day, just chit-chatting with Jeff. Now here's the thing. What you said is right on, Luz. I think I did that a lot. There was a lot of time spent doing that, but I didn't realize how much until I started writing it down.
Right.
Meaning, if I hadn't been keeping track of it like we're talking about, if you would have asked me at the end of the day, how long did you talk to Jeff? I would have said, I don't know, 45 minutes to an hour. I wouldn't even have known. So for me, all of a sudden I was like, I get it now. Like I'm at work. I can either be productive or I can be indirectly productive or I can be non-productive. And at the end of the day, it's back to work expands to fill the time available for its completion. See, I just knew I was going to stay at the office till 5 o'clock and I didn't have any appointments till 3 or whatever. But I had done my prospecting. And for me, my prospecting was always prospect until you set an appointment. And so I had set my appointment. So here was the key thing. What I really asked myself is, I had been productive because for me, setting an appointment every day was really my objective. And I had done that day. But so the question is, if I have 2 hours that I'm going to do nothing, do I really want to spend it visiting with Jeff, or would I rather go home and be with my family or whatever? And so for me, that's where all of a sudden this whole thing became like, I promise you, I did not ever unintentionally go spend that much time again. Like if Jeff and I went to lunch and we did a long lunch or went golfing or something, like it was planned, like, okay, yeah, we're going to go do that. But for me, that's where this became very eye-opening. And so again, I just noticed that's what the reason agents do this is they don't keep control of their I and their P time. If you'll do that, If you will keep track of it and make sure that your I time and P time together are around 60%, your business will do this instead. And that's the key. See, anytime you notice you're off track, start keeping track of your time, and what you will find is you're spending less than 60% between I time and P time. And if you are, then either one of two things, either quit just hanging out talking to agents, like you said, or so meaning spend less time at the office, or fill it with productive or indirectly productive things.
Well, just yesterday, I went shopping anyway, and I found somebody that I started talking to her with the intention to talk real estate.
Okay.
But we talk a good deal of time of whatever nonsense. And then when I got to the point of talking about real estate and what do I do and all of that. And she said, yeah, my daughter wants to buy, but not right now, in a year, blah, blah. And I said, okay, that's great. I said, can you give me your name and your phone number so we can keep in touch? She gave me her name. She didn't want to give her phone number. She says, oh, I changed phones, whatever nonsense. And I'm thinking, yeah, right.
Yeah.
But then I was meditating on the same thing you just said. I spent this chunk of time on this woman. The end was not.
Yeah.
I mean, she wanted to chit chat, but she didn't want to commit. So I'm thinking this is bad for my business, because in the end, this is their time that was non-productive.
Yeah.
Nothing came out of it, and all of this time is gone.
Yep.
So I'm thinking when I'm doing that, maybe I need to have that in 5-minute increments if I'm prospecting face to face. Kind of like, okay, move on,
Yep.
move on, because if not, you can kill a lot of time with.
That's right. Yep.
Once-
Yeah, you got it. Okay, so here's the last thing that I want to say, and then just I'll answer any questions that you guys have. But it's and now I just lost it. Shoot, what was I gonna say? Oh, I know what it is. Okay. Here's the thing. Do not get depressed. Like 1 week doesn't tell the story. So like, don't track this for 1 week and then go, oh, I'm horrible. Like, because here's the thing. Yeah, here's the thing. Most agents, most seasoned, productive agents are somewhere between 7 and 11% productive. Just productive, not indirectly, but most agents, seasoned agents who are making a good amount of money, over $100,000 a year, are still probably only 7 to 11% productive. Now, I'm not including indirectly productive, but I'm just saying they're probably only 7 to 11% productive in their time. So don't do this for 1 week and then go, oh man, I'm just horrible. Like, that's not what I'm saying. What you want to do though is do this for a week and see where you're at, and then see if the next week you can just increase this percent. Just what you want to be doing is just, as long as you will consistently be getting better and better at your percentage between indirectly productive and productive, you're going to be okay. Like, you'll get there to where you're at 60%. But the key thing is just if you do it. So for me, like if somebody came to me and said, coach me, the first thing I'm going to say is, great, fill this out every single day, and then let's get together in a week and look at it. Well, at the end of that week, it's just going to be information to me. I'm not going to be like, oh, you're horrible, you got to, but I'm going to just say, okay, great, let's do it again. And then I'd have you track it again for a week. And then as long as the next week, this is slowly between these two together, slowly increasing, we're good. I'm happy. Like, that's kind of how you need to look at it, is just every week I need to just be getting a little bit better until I can get to this and then stay at that 60 to 40%, or 60% indirectly productive. And like I say, really, even if you're between 50 and 60, I would be like, hey, you're going to be fine. You'll make money. But if you're less than that, so these two added together, if you're 10, 11, or 10, 15, 20%, I would be saying, okay, we got to figure out a way to get you prospecting more. And so again, coming back to being here in class, learning how to do the MLS, Moxie, Engage, all that kind of stuff, do it. Just build it into your schedule of, hey, I'm going to spend an hour every day on Moxie. And whatever I can get in during that hour, great, and then I'm not working on it until the next day. It's just so easy for us to go, "Hey, I'm just gonna get it all figured out with Moxie, and then once I have that, then I'll start production." The problem is you run out of money before you do that, and then you're out of the business. That motivating?
Yeah.
It's not scary, it's not Halloween.
Yeah, I know, I'm trying to scare you. Okay. All right. What questions?
So as far as, I mean, I'm kind of got just George saying prospect about 30 times one time. But like, and well, I mean, just looking at your chart, most of our time will be spent prospecting, just.
Yeah, if you don't have this,
Yeah,
60% of your time should be prospect.
automatic. Okay.
And then the second piece that we didn't talk about though is if you're prospecting though, so let me say it this way. If you're finding week after week that you are at 60%, but it's all this, it's all prospecting, you're not getting appointments from it. That's the cool thing. So again, back to coaching. If you tracked your time and then you came to me, Aubrey, in a month from now and you're like, hey, I've kept track for a month. I can just look at that and tell you what you need to do in your business. It's that simple, because if what you're doing is prospecting at 60%, but you're not getting any P time, the productive, what's the problem?
Skills.
Yeah, skills, but ultimately what I've found is if you're high here and low here, you're not asking for the appointment.
Oh, okay.
You're prospecting, but you're not asking for the appointment.
You're just talking to people.
If somebody is high here, but it's not turning into deals, it's one of two things. Either they're going on a bad appointments that they shouldn't go on, or they're going on the appointment and not asking the person to sign. So at the end of the day, I can look at somebody who's tracked this, and if I can see where you're at and ask a couple of questions, I know right what the problem is with your business. It's very easy to analyze where you're at.
So you said if there's a lot of prospecting and not productive, what was it again?
You're not asking for appointments.
Okay.
Asking the right questions.
Yep. Yeah,
Specifically
or
on
yes,
money.
or we need to work on your skill in terms of asking to getting to ask.
Get more script time.
What do you mean by that?
Just
To practice?
with myself.
Oh, no, find somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have people, I can talk to people. I have like 5 partners I worked with. I said,
Here in the office.
yeah, I just go, hey, you have a role playing partner? I said, no, can I be it?
Yeah, and you should get a few different people that, and even if it's just 10 or 15 minutes that hey, let's just get together and you'll learn from people. The other thing that,
Yes.
Cause I need that. like-
the other thing that I'm happy to do too, and any of the managers here will do, is if you are prospecting and want us to come and listen, just let me know, hey, come listen to me, because then we can coach you on getting more appointments from your prospecting. So, yeah, very good. All right, thoughts? Helpful?
Yeah, just
Good
question,
stuff?
you said if
Excellent.
there's a productive and no results, what was it again?
If you're doing a lot of this
No.
and not getting closings from it, then the problem is either you're counting stuff as an appointment that's not really an appointment. Like, I'll give you an example. So remember I said to you guys, I think I've told you the story, but about how for me, I just had decided I will not go home until I've set an appointment for the day.
Mhm.
Well, what happened?
Yeah, probably.
Well, it's amazing though, when you, how you do it, but what I found though, is that sometimes what I would end up doing, and once I realized I was doing this, again, back to power comes out of telling the truth on your paper. Once I told myself the truth, I quit doing it. But what I found is some days if I hadn't gotten an appointment, I would call up a for sale by owner and be, look at your house, I might have a buyer interested. Yeah, you can come. And I'd be like, yeah, there's my appointment. Well, so then I would go on this appointment that would turn into nothing. So part of it is either you're getting appointments that you're counting stuff as an appointment that's not really an appointment, like you should have clarified it a little bit more, it's not really an appointment. Or you're going on the appointment and then you're not saying to the person, sign the contract.
Oh,
I
no.
would have never thought about that. It's a little shady.
Oh,
But
it's for sure.
it's a lot shady, but it got you in the door, didn't it?
Yeah, but I never got me personally, other people might say differently. I never once got a listing from one that I just called and said, I might have a buyer. Could I come and look at your house?
Yeah, it's
Like-
usually turns pretty bad.
Yeah, so, but if
It turns bad because you're not really.
If though, yeah, but here's the key thing. Yeah, it's not a great way to start a relationship with a lie. Like,
Right,
but
agreed.
for me, if you said to them, hey, I work with a lot of buyers in the area and I'd like to come by and preview your home. And while I'm there, I'll share with you what I do to get a home sold. That's gonna be
That's the
okay.
truth.
Cause yeah, you're telling that again, one of my mantras is power comes out of telling the truth.
Gotcha.
Cool. Any other questions? Yep.
That's a good way to put that.
I just have a question, for clarification. So that
Sure.
roller coaster of income that you went over there, that's on the board there.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, because I missed part of that, that example schedule is made to take those peaks and valleys out of that roller coaster, or that's the average with that?
Yes.
No. Thank you. Yeah, no, if you will follow the schedule, you will not have these.
Got it. Okay, I just want to make sure I was hearing that right.
That your business should slowly be increasing. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
thanks.
great question. Okay, thank you all for being here. So next week, we have Summit, but I'm unclear, is it Tuesday or Wednesday?
Wednesday.
It is Wednesday. Okay.
Wednesday.
No, you don't have to register. Yeah, so it's at the Miller Conference Center, which is at the south, the Sandy campus of Salt Lake Community College. So just off of I-15 at, let's see. The address is 9750 South, 300 West in Sandy.
Isn't that
And
just west of the freeway?
Yeah, it's on the west side of I-15. So if you know where our Realtor campus, the building is,
West-
it's like the exact same south, just the other side of the freeway. So. But
And-
yeah, so you don't need to register for that, no, but
Are you gonna
Starts
email
at-
us the work tracker for those of us who are online?
yeah, if you'll throw in the chat box your email address and then I'll send it to you here later today.
Thanks.
Well, then.
We voted and they said yes, I should be.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
That
Okay,
was-
thanks for being here, guys. See ya.
That was an
Thanks,
eye-opener.
Russ.
Aubrey, take my number.
Okay.
When you want to practice scripts.
Okay.